Mayor Mamdani。
マムダニ氏は2025年のニューヨーク市長選挙に勝利し、ニューヨーク市初のイスラム教徒の市長となりました。家賃上限の凍結や無料化、バスの効率化、無償化など、労働者層に直接届く公約が好評ではあるが、就任1年後には歴史的な予算危機を宣言し、富裕層、企業への増税、固定資産税の引き上げを検討するなど、財政的に難しい舵取りを迫られている。今回の動画では、マムダニ市長とその財政状況に焦点を当てて、アメリカ人のマムダニ市長に対する評価を見ていきましょう。
The prior mayoral administration has left us with a $12 billion fiscal deficit.
Translation, your money as a New Yorker was spent just not on things that could actually make your life better. And I'll prove it to you. Politicians exist to make us believe that we don't have money for anything. No money for childcare, no money for schools, no money for healthcare, to distract you from what they're actually spending money on. Exhibit A, the police. You know, people often ask, how did Eric Adams even get elected? You see, politicians like Eric Adams serve a purpose. As a former police chief, he could stomach pretending that cash assistance, rental assistance, and other critical programs didn't actually need that much funding while giving the NYPD $5.8 billion, knowing full well that the bill for underfunded social services would still come knocking. And the worst part is that all this is used to justify cutting social programs that were already underfunded to begin with. Working people should not have to pay for budget crisis that they did not cause. The political establishment has long led us to believe that the needs of the working class and people in poverty are what's draining our budgets. Look at the war being waged right now on SNAP benefits at the federal level. And people fall for it because they don't know the full picture. They don't know how much tax cuts for the wealthy and for corporations have contributed to the budget crisis. They don't know that New York City contributes $21 billion more to the state than it receives back. That's $21 billion of funded programs all across the state. But when we ask for rental assistance in a city that is growing more and more expensive by the day, we're met with, how can we afford that? The funniest part about all of this is that Eric Adams, friend to corporations and the wealthy everywhere, has actually created a use case for taxing the wealthy. That's how we raise the money to cover this $12 billion gap. So congratulations, you played yourself. Welcome to a new era.
At the heart of this path is a property tax increase. This would effectively be a tax on working and middle-class New Yorkers who have a median income of $122,000. The second path also requires us to raid our reserves. It would mean withdrawing $980 million from our city's rainy day fund in fiscal year 2026 and $229 million from the Retiree Health Benefit Trust in fiscal year 2027. These are steps that have been taken before, but only in moments of extraordinary external crisis. Mayor Bloomberg's response to the 2008 financial collapse, and Mayor de Blasio's response to the enormous revenue shortfall caused by the pandemic.
Okay, so then that begs the question, why does it need to happen now? You know, we're not in a situation like the 2008 crisis. We're not in a COVID situation. So yeah, like why does this need to happen now? Well, that's because Mamdani is trying to increase New York City's budget by about $11 billion next year. So just to be clear, if he wasn't trying to increase New York City's budget by $11 billion next year, there would be no gap. There's about a $5.5 billion gap, and he wants to increase the budget by about $11 billion. So you have about $5.5 billion that would be left if he wasn't trying to increase it by $11 billion. So he's going out here and acting as if this is a crisis, but it's not a crisis, or you could argue it's a crisis of his own making. So they want to take spending from about $116 billion to $127 billion for New York City alone. Now, think about this. Florida's budget for the entire state of Florida is about $117 billion, which would be less than what Mamdani wants for New York City. New York City has a population of about 8.5 million. Florida has a population of around 24 million people. So Florida has around 3 times the amount of people that New York City has. And New York City has a higher budget than the entire state of Florida. They have enough money in New York City. They're just not using it properly. So now he's talking about raiding people's retirement funds and increasing property taxes so he can get what he wants, essentially. They have more than enough money in New York City. They just don't spend it well. 40% of the city's budget goes to the Department of Education. And New York City's 4th graders are behind Florida's 4th graders when it comes to education. 4th grade is young enough to where there's still changes that could be made, but they're old enough to where you can see how the system they're operating is. Also, around that time, kids go from learning to read to starting to read to learn. So fourth grade is an important time. That's why I talked about that age. So they spend more money and they get less results. Democrats have a spending problem. It's obvious. But that's all I've got for now. Don't forget I have a free email newsletter.
So New York City just spent more money on one homeless person than you made at your job last year, $81,705 per homeless person, and none of that money was actually given to the homeless person. The average American household earned $81,228, which means the government outspent your entire salary to keep someone on the street. Here's the part that should make you angry. That money didn't go to the homeless person, not even close. It went to the system built around them. The shelters, the administrators, the case managers, the private contracts, the overhead, the bureaucracy. An industry that doesn't exist to end homelessness. It exists to manage it. Now ask yourself this. What would happen if you just gave that money to the person directly? At $81,705 per homeless person, most of them could afford nearly 2 years of rent in New York City. 2 years. Enough time to stabilize, get a job, get on their feet. Most of them would no longer be homeless. So why doesn't that happen? Because a homeless person who gets housed doesn't generate revenue for the system anymore. They don't need the case manager, they don't need the shelter bed, they don't need the contracted agency. The system loses a customer, and that's the part nobody wants to say out loud. A homeless person is worth $81,705 a year to the system. A solved homeless person is worth $0. So every year the budget grows, the homelessness stays, and they come back asking for more money to manage the exact problem that last year's money was supposed to fix. This is not a failure, this is the business model.
This is the 15th homeless shelter in Greenwood Heights. This one is over 300 plus beds for homeless men.
We're seeing shelters sprouting up all over the city. We're finding that it's nearly $10,000 per unit per month.
Big corruption. $10,000 a month per bed, $3 million a month. At night, this is not full. We're still paying the $3 million a month in taxpayers' money. Unoccupied or occupied, do you not understand the corruption that goes on in New York State and New York City? You deal with your effing lobbyists and your people that control you, and you get paid off, you get your little donations, and you get some money, and God knows how many people eating off of this shit. Wait a minute. This is the reason why it's unaffordable? $45 million a month? $540 million in 8 blocks in Brooklyn. You wanna fix your budget, Mrs. Governor? And the Magic Wand guy? You wanna fix your budget right now? The fuck I gotta tax the rich for? You're burning the money.
Well, it looks like millionaire Speaker of the New York City Council, Julie Menon, has caved and agreed to tax the rich, which does include herself. How valiant. A new proposal to be added to New York State's final budget was just jointly announced by Mayor Mamdani and Speaker of the New York City Council, Julie Menon, to scale back New York's hedge fund handout, implemented by disgraced former Governor Andrew Cuomo as a workaround for the ultra-wealthy to lower their federal income taxes, and then have New York turn around and refund them 100%. Basically, working New Yorkers have been paying billionaires and millionaires' taxes for them since 2017. And this new policy would reduce that refund from 100% to 75%. Which I know, upon first hearing, doesn't sound like that big of a difference. But this change would raise $1 billion, which would go towards closing the $5.4 billion deficit in the budget that Mayor Eric Adams left Mayor Mamdani. All without cutting services that working New Yorkers rely on. Not to mention the fact that this reduction is actually the largest that we've seen compared to other states that have already implemented something similar. Connecticut's credit sits at 87.5%, and Massachusetts' credit sits at 90%. So I guess all this is to say, remember, progress is not always perfection, but it's better than nothing at all. And just like the pied-à-terre tax that was introduced a couple weeks ago, This does not mean that we're done. Join the
I literally never want to hear a single politician say that something cannot be accomplished or something cannot be done in a timely manner ever again, because the speed with which we are seeing Mamdani accomplish things is unprecedented, and it absolutely shouldn't be. And a huge part of it is just the difference between what it looks like to have someone who is still newer to the game and has that genuine hunger to prove themselves, has that absolute passion for what they are doing, and actually is taking the time to not just go, what are my team telling me is important, but to literally walk the streets and ask people what is important, to answer 311 calls and understand the problems that people are facing that they are saying, please help me with, is such a difference to the 97-year-old person holding on for that last slither of power and autonomy and identity that they still get from being an elected official. And instead of retiring at 97, they're holding on till literally their last dying breath just to have that. It absolutely shouldn't be night and day. But what we are seeing is what is possible and what can be done. And so for all the politicians coming up in Mamdani's wake, I'm so sorry, but you're all going to have to work a lot harder than the ones of yesteryear.
Ladies and gentlemen, we back on the bullshit again. And you might be seeing delays in your payment checks. Pension, to be exact. Because Mamdani wants to delay them for some sort of crazy ass reason. Since we're already in debt as it is, which I doubt he can do anything that stupid to literally take pensions. We're not going to go into that. You don't believe me? You do your own research, or you can check out this article from New York One, aka Spectrum One. And it reads, Mayor Mamdani's floats delays to pensions for fund payments. You can go ahead and read at the bottom, right here. Mayor Mamdani has called the $5.4 billion budget deficit a generational crisis, and one idea to solve it would be to entail pushing off or decreasing payments to pension funds for city employees, possibly to the next generation. And of course, you can read some more at the bottom right here. Let's continue with the article, shall we? And up top, it says what you need to know. Mayor Zoran Mamdani is floating an idea to change pension fund payments. The move would free up tax dollars to help close the deficit. Councilman, obviously the council speaker, proposed a similar idea to save more than $1 billion a year. And of course, you can read at the bottom. So, what do you guys think about this idea? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? Do you think that they could be able to close the budget gap? Or, yeah, whatever. Let me know down below.
Republicans in Congress are now trying to ban socialism and communism in this country with a bill called the Mamdani Act. And yes, this bill is named after Zoran Mamdani. And what this bill tries to do is that for non-citizens who express support for socialism or communism, what they would do is that they would just deport them. This is what they're trying to do with this bill. Now, I have a few things to say about this, and the first thing is that this is completely stupid. You can't ban ideas, you dipshits. That's not how this works. Second thing, it's a clear violation of the First Amendment and free speech. And yes, even non-citizens are entitled to that same constitutional right that we as citizens have when it comes to free speech and the First Amendment. And also, this just further proves that Republicans are hypocrites, because they will always love to say that, they support the First Amendment or free speech, but then they'll try to take it away from other people if they support a different economic system. Again, they're all hypocrites. Now, also, what's really concerning about this bill called the Mamdani Act is that it takes away the court's ability to review the cases of these people, and it also takes away the ability for these non-citizens to challenge this in court. So it effectively strips away due process as well, which is something that the Trump administration has tried to do multiple times, and unfortunately, they have also been successful in this in some areas.
ニューヨーク市長がイスラム教徒？もうニューヨークはめちゃくちゃに壊されるんじゃないかと思いましたが、実際は宗教を直接的な統治の道具にするのではなく、差別されてきたマイノリティとしての視点を隠させせ 移民保護の政策に組み込んでいて、そうきたかっていうのが正直な感想です。ただ、2026年に入って財政危機を宣言。やっぱり不安しかないな、と感じてしまいますね。皆さんはどう思われますか？ぜひコメント欄でご意見をお聞かせください。この動画は以上になります。最後までご視聴ありがとうございました。